You were born with individual strengths and a unique purpose. Don't let fears, false beliefs, or life's happenings diminish your influence. It's time to live and lead for impact. Host Kirsten Ross, expert of transformation, will help you defeat the drama and overcome the trauma that can stop you in your tracks. You'll gain focus, find confidence, and take bold action. Unleash passionate, purposeful you. Let's go.
Welcome to Live and Lead for Impact. I'm Kirsten Ross Vogel, your host, and this is episode 251. I am bringing you an amazing guest today. I can't wait to learn more about his work. His name is Jesson Bradshaw, and he is the CEO of Energy Ogre, an electricity management company that uses proprietary systems to ensure its customers are always getting the best prices on their electricity. Energy Ogre has helped over 100,000 Texans save up to 40% on their electricity bills, over 150 million since its founding. Jesson hopes to bring attention to Texas's deregulated electricity industry by discussing topics such as renewable energy, future technologies, and consumer services. Welcome, Jesson.
Thanks for having me, Kirsten.
Yeah, thanks for coming aboard. And I'm like I said, I'm really looking forward to learning more about the work that you do and how you might be able to help others beyond Texas. So tell me a little bit more about the work that you do and the impact that you're making.
Well, first of all, I was super appreciative for being able to, sit and speak with folks like yourself and obviously the broad base listenership that folks in this space have. I love this long form format, and what it allows us to really do is to dig in a little bit deeper on some of the things that are happening in the energy space, electricity specifically. There are definitely some parts of this that are unique to Texas, the way Texas is set up, but what we're seeing is that, across the board, whether it's a push for green energy or a broader based understanding of, climatological impacts or folks' concerns about how they're impacting things, the consciousness that we see across the board from the consumer base is increasing around energy and energy consumption. So I love these kinds of formats and being able to talk to folks like yourselves, because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of people really have a sincere interest in doing well, but they may not be able to sort of put the parts and pieces together correctly. And our goal here is to not make sure that folks don't get taken advantage of as they're looking, to figure out what they should be doing. And so that's a real core part of where we came from in the Texas space, where, specifically we help folks here in the competitive market really assess different supply options that are available to them. And we make selections for our customers based upon the way they specifically use their own electricity in their house. And it makes a big difference in terms of which provider and which plan is really optimized for them. And that's kind of what we've been doing since we got started.
Great. And I feel like I just have to ask, is this, so of course, Texas was in the news a lot with the grid and all the challenges that happened with, people not having access to electricity for a period of time last, winter
February.
into spring. Okay. I couldn't remember exactly when it was.
Sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. It's very top of mind for you. Are you involved in any way, shape, or form with anything related to those challenges?
Well, I mean, every single one of our customers is interconnected to this system. And so it had an effect on everybody here within the state that's part of the state system. So there's parts of the state that are not part of the Texas system, but it's the vast majority of the population centers. It's the greater Houston, greater Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Corpus Christi. So it was the bulk of the Texas population dealt with the effects of what happened in February of last year in one form or another. So yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm understanding is you help people take a look at different options for receiving their electricity to their homes. Do you also work in the commercial space as well?
We do. Our primary focus is to help homeowners and the individuals in making these assessments on their, usage in their homes, because there's so many other resources that are available for businesses. And usually those resources are not quite as focused on trying to help individual homeowners. And so that's where we started. And we absolutely assist commercial customers but it's not a primary focus. Our goal is to help the residential customers wherever we can.
And how would someone know if they're outside of the state of Texas, whether or not they have competitors to how they're receiving their electricity? Where would they look for that information and, start doing a deeper dive? The work that you're doing for people in Texas, how can they kind of see if there might be an opportunity for them to save money as well?
That's a great question. So in Texas, generally speaking, we have a little bit of a patchwork where there's parts of the state that are open to competition. There's other parts of the state that are not open to competition. And that's a particularly challenging issue that we've seen over the course of the last few years, because we've had so many people moving to Texas from other places and other parts of the country. And, some parts they're familiar with retail competition. Like there's been some form of retail competition in the state of New York for some time. So that's not a completely foreign concept. But if we have folks who are moving here from California, they're not used to those types of things. So it's definitely a challenge. So there are a number of resources that are available. We have some resources that are available on our website in a savings calculator where we can pretty much look up by zip code. Some zip codes have areas that are open and some areas that are not open, but generally speaking, we can help folks, hone in on if they're not sure as to whether or not that, they're eligible for competitive offers.
Okay. And how long have you been doing this work?
As Energy Ogre, I've been involved with the electricity space since the mid-90s. So I'm kind of a dinosaur in this space, I suppose. But Energy Ogre, we got started in 2013. So the market here has been open to retail competition since January 1st of 2002. And I've done a number of other things in this space here, but no one had ever really crossed this bridge. No one had ever fully aligned themselves with the consumer, with the residential consumer, to provide this kind of assistance. And one, it was because it was a hard problem, but two, it was challenging. We had to wait for some emergent technologies to get to a point where they were ripened enough that we could roll this out on a cost-effective basis for folks.
And I want to ask you, what has motivated you to make this unique impact in the world? I know anyone who's listening right now, thinking about energy and electricity, of course, we start thinking about climate change. We start thinking about, effectively receiving our electricity. I know where we live, almost everybody has generators because definitely there isn't a tendency for electricity to go out at times. But so what has been your personal experience or the experience of others that has really motivated you?
Well, for me, I started my career early, super fortunate to have been very much in the right place at the right time. When the whole market was really starting to undergo liberalization, deregulating at the wholesale level, the federal level, which really began in earnest in the mid-90s. And so I've been able to see these things along the way. And, early in my career, as I'm trading commodities, kind of like you would expect to see, I think everyone's notion of someone maybe like on Wall Street or whatever, the trading pits and those types of things. We did do quite a bit of that in our way in the energy world and, natural gas and electricity markets. And, we did well for personally, I was fortunate to have some good mentors and I was able to do some neat things. But really, when you make a bunch of money for a large organization, I would sometimes go home wondering, okay, well, what positive thing did I do in the world? I mean, it was great. We sort of definitely made shareholders money and we definitely made enough to employ people and all those different kinds of things, but it wasn't quite as massively satisfying. And I left that company. We formed another company. I formed another company with a gentleman that I worked with. And that was a ton of fun with us starting out on our own and beginning a business. And that was one where, it was us and it was us at risk and us funding it. And really took a lot of pleasure in us creating jobs out of nowhere. I mean, it was one of the best parts and the most enjoyable parts of having built that business is, I think at one point we created over 160 jobs, and we tried to make these, well-paying jobs, and spent a lot of time mentoring folks and trying to get them, to have an increase in their professional power as they went on. And I really, really enjoyed that quite a bit. And we sold that business to another company. And when I was thinking about, well, no one's really, everyone's kind of looking, even a broker, like in a traditional sense, a broker would be, someone that puts together a willing buyer and a willing seller. But, historically, a broker has a profit motivation. They have a self-interest in the terms of that transaction. So we started thinking about like, no one had ever really fully aligned themselves with the consumer. So it's a lot of times when a consumer, they're trying to make an assessment as to who, there may be hundreds of different rate plans that are available and, 10, 15, 20 different providers. So I think a lot of consumers here got overwhelmed, and it was the tragedy of too many options and a little bit of analysis paralysis. And so what we thought was, well, is there an opportunity for us to step in and simplify this process for consumers by just becoming a fiduciary for them, by becoming their agent? And it's kind of like in a lot of other parts of life, when we, our time is more valuable, or there's other things that we don't really want to waste the time coming up to speed or learning about, we outsource the execution to other experts. And so we thought, well, why can't we do this for consumers as well? And I think they'd be shocked at what the value of that is for them. And so that's one of the most amazing and awesome parts of being able to do this with Energy Ogre is to really save a lot of folks a tremendous amount of money. Where that's the most impactful, is the most obvious to me, is a lot of we have a large portion of our customer base are going to be folks that maybe are on fixed income, or more elderly, or just don't understand some of the way the changes have happened, and they're used to there being, back before 2002, where there was like one utility, and they get nervous about, who's reliable and who's not reliable, because they don't understand how it all works. So been a number of folks that we've been able to really put more disposable income back in their pockets. And it's especially important for folks that are on fixed income. It's important for folks that are saving for their kids, college education or whatever have you. So an extra $1,000 here a year, or 2,000, 3,000, whatever the case may be, 500, it all adds up over time. And it's just a pretty neat feeling for all of us when, we're really being able to push our business forward, but at the same time being of service to so many of our fellow Texans.
That's great. And it's funny, you're kind of leading into my next question. However, I want to pause and ask, so from a business perspective, as you're working on this impact in the world, how does your organization get paid? Is it from the energy side or the consumer side?
No, we wanted to be 100% transparent and be fully aligned. So our customers pay us a subscription, a monthly subscription. It's like, we always thought about it, well, buy us a hamburger a month, it's $10 a month, and we handle that. So we don't receive any compensation from any providers or bonuses or placement fees or anything like that. We're 100% aligned with the consumer, and it makes things a lot easier that way. So they pay us. We're their agent. We have a fiduciary responsibility, and we're going to manage their houses like how we manage our own.
So you are continuing, it sounds like, to analyze their usage and the cost and all of that. And are you sometimes switching them often to different providers?
We are. So one of the nice things about the way the legislation was written here in Texas is, there's been some tweaks over the years, but the original competitive law, Senate Bill 7, is just extremely consumer friendly. And so there's significant and very powerful consumer protections that are built into the statute. And so one of those is that virtually every one of these plans that's offered there is an ability to break your contract early and pay a fixed termination charge. So that sets a benchmark for us to look at, okay, where are you today? What is the cost to leave this contract? And what's the math look like in terms of maybe better competitive rates that might come onto the market? So it's very market oriented, making sure that folks are staying in that bottom decile or the bottom quartile from a cost perspective, which is what we're focused on. Also, we've had a almost complete deployment of smart meters, at least in the competitive areas of Texas. And so that allows us to keep track and continuously look at how folks' usage is changing over time. And is there, let's just say something happened where, somebody's, parents came to live with them, or they had a couple of their children they thought were going to be in college, but they were back home, or if you are working from the house now, working remote as opposed to going into the office all the time, those things are all going to change not only your consumption profile, but the maximum amount that you're using. And it changes perhaps maybe the optimized solution. So we keep looking at these types of things over time to make sure that folks are maintaining being in that good, fair overall deal. So there's a continuous process associated with this as well.
It's funny, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about our electricity source would send out each month like a little analysis, and they would say like show you where you were, based on your neighbors, and then they use a little smiley face where you could quickly tell, like, are you doing a good job with your energy consumption or not? And I hate to say it, but boy, when our boys were teens, our energy usage was much greater, and we never got a smiley face. And as they moved out, we get a lot of smiley faces now, which is great.
Well, it's funny too, because benchmarking is so difficult. Even if you had two homes, let's just say that were built by the same builder in the same neighborhood that had the same floor plan, the number of folks that you have in your house, maybe the appliances that you put in your house, even simple as are you frequently changing the air filters? It's a bigger deal here in Texas. We're running our HVAC equipment so much it's so electric driven. Not changing your air filters, makes those systems run suboptimally. So there's a lot of individual factors that go into it. But there are a lot of these providers have tried to, or a lot of the utilities have tried to gamify that, which I think is in some ways interesting. In other ways, I think of not quite so much value.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, I think the comparisons, yes, like you said, not always super accurate. And but it was, we do still kind of laugh at that we still get those smiley faces now. We're like,
it's funny
okay, we
because
weren't
folks
the
get
ones
excited about it. Yeah, for sure.
So I was saying that you were kind of leading me into my next question, which is, can you tell the story of a specific impact that you've made that really fuels your passion? So I love hearing these stories because, one, I think it's so important, as impact makers, to keep them top of mind, because it can, again, fuel that passion that gives us tenacity. But also, I think it'll be really illustrative of the difference that you can make. So when you stop and think about the many people that you've helped over years, is there one that really comes top of mind?
And there's so many folks. For me, it's a good feeling to assist people and just keeping more of what they're earning anyway. So that's just it's funny because electricity is this weird commodity, even in a competitive environment where it's unlike anything else that we buy. Because there's zero difference. Like the product that one provider is selling is exactly the same as the product another provider is. And like there's no difference in electricity. It's the ultimate fungible commodity. So literally you have a bunch of people that are selling the exact same product. And it's a good thing, and it's a rewarding thing, I think, to be able to demystify some of these things so people don't kind of get taken advantage. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I don't think that the providers are intending to take advantage of people. It's just they haven't really fully unlocked this stuff for themselves. So it's a hugely satisfying thing to find that solution for some of those folks. But there's no question to me, the ones that I think about frequently are a lot of the elderly folks that are on fixed incomes. I mean, there's one gentleman that was one of our first customers going back to 2013, 2014, and World War II veteran gentleman that was really struggling. I think he had one of his kids had passed away and there had been some expense associated with that. And I mean, this gentleman was just absolutely struggling to pay his electricity bills with the stuff that he had available to him, and to be able to find a solution for him, for someone that's kind of at that stage of his life, was just unbelievably, it just makes you feel good. It's a fun thing. It makes you go home with a sense of purpose. It helps you sleep well at night, knowing that you're making a difference. Another lady I spoke to, as ridiculous as this sounds, she was getting her electricity bills cut. So she was now saying, "Oh, thank goodness I can start running my air conditioning a little bit in the summertime." And I think this lady was in her 80s. And it's just that we don't think about it as much. And I think that, in our hustle and bustle, but there are some people that absolutely, have some unbelievable difficulties. They don't like to talk to other people about some of those things, but being able to make a difference for them it's almost indescribable. And there's so many of those different kinds of stories. It is a fuel that kind of, it makes it such a rewarding thing to be here on a day in and day out basis. And I'm super thankful that I was able to do this at this point in my career.
Yeah, well, that's got to be, yes, a huge relief for people to find ways to save money on, what they require. And wow, I can't imagine being in Texas and really hesitating to use that air conditioning in the summer.
Right. Especially in your 80s.
Yeah, that is not good. So,
Right.
tell me, what words of wisdom do you have for others who are working to make their impact in the world?
Well, I mean, I think it's so difficult everyone. There's a huge interest in obviously trying to. I really believe that people are so much more aware socially and passionate about some of those issues today. It is kind of a challenge to figure out how do I fit? How can I, do I go work for a nonprofit? Do I go start a new business? Do I go volunteer my time? There's all those different types of things. For me, what I can say is, for folks that are, let's say you have a job today, you're in something that you're not quite sure, and you found something else, or you've done research, or you've read on to another opportunity or a problem more that you think you might have a better solution for. That entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is an amazing thing, and it's something that I very much would love to encourage wherever I can, because I think that that's what's going to help solve a lot of the problems that we deal with as a society. Finding smart people that come up with better solutions, or they figure out how to apply technologies in new places to bring better overall things to other people is something that is so important in a dynamic society setting. But I think doing some research about some of these things, finding a solution that's hard, or solving a problem that's hard, is a good place to start. And for folks that get worried about stepping off on their own, what I would say is, from my personal experience, when I decided to go start our first business that I was involved with, I really kind of looked at it on a risk reward basis. For me, it was, I very well may fall flat on my face. There's things that are outside my direct control that need to happen in order for this to be successful. But the worst case scenario is that I try this for a year or 6 months or 2 years or whatever the case is. And if it doesn't work out, then I have a skill set, and I have, an ability to go back into my industry and find a job in this space. And my worst case scenario is pretty definable. So, I think it's hard to take a risk sometimes, but I think if folks can get themselves into a position to be able to do so selfishly for society as a whole, I think that that's where some of the most amazing insights and breakthroughs really come through, is folks finding some solutions and having the passion to drive some of those things forward for the benefit of us all.
That's awesome. Well, and that's one of the key reasons I started this podcast. I think that, not only do we each have individual strengths or gifts whatever we want to call them, the things that come easily to us, which by the way, often we minimize because they come so easily to us. We think they don't have value, but also I believe that we all have a unique call to action, that difference that we want to make in the world. And I always say, most of the time as I end this podcast, I say the world is waiting. Get out there and make your bigger, bolder impact. And it can be scary. It likely will be scary. Our human brains don't like change particularly, but I love that you shared about look at what's in your control and really get real about what are the chances? What's the worst case scenario? What are the chances of that worst case scenario happening? And what alternatives do you have? And like you said, when you first launched that original business, well, if things don't work out, you could always just go back and get a job and it would be okay. All would be well. So I think often it's our swirling fear when we don't get specific about it and really give it a name and then look at the reality of that, that can help us overcome and help us move and bust through that fear so that it's not a stopping force.
Yeah, I think that selfishly as an entrepreneur, part of me says, thank goodness not everybody is willing to take the leap. If everyone were doing it, there'd be a lot less opportunity for everybody that does. But the other side to that is, look, as you said, it's so true, is that there is a unique insight or a unique skill set that has to do with folks' accumulated experience that they can bring to bear, solutions that may be difficult, if not impossible, for others to do so. So living a life today where I'm able to spend time, in the evenings with my family and, have a tremendous sense of satisfaction in my day-to-day stuff. That's something that I really wish for everybody. So hopefully you can encourage folks to live their best life.
Absolutely. It's all about designing your life and your work so that it works. So, well, thank you, Jesson, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about Jesson and his work or connect with him, all of his social media links will be available on the show notes from today's episode. You can find that by going to defeatthedrama.com, click on the podcast tab and go to episode 251. And if you need some additional support, encouragement, strategies, tactics to make your bigger, bolder impact, please go to myimpactacademy.com/join. And it begins with a 2-week free trial. So there's no investment initially, but I promise you're going to want to stay. But it's 24/7 access to so many digital resources around those key topics that are so important for you in making your impact, whether it's leadership, communication, healthy relationships. If we want to harvest our own time, we need to be able to say yes and no appropriately to others. And so that's all about boundaries. But so personal success strategies and more. And on top of that, every other week, we are having these amazing group strategy and coaching sessions where we get to see one another and you can hop in to ask your individual questions to gain customized strategies for whatever hurdle you're working to overcome at the time. So please, again, that's myimpactacademy.com/join for 24/7 immediate access to a wealth of videos, audios, and PDF downloads, and also those invaluable every other week times with some other amazing leaders and impact makers along with me. So I hope to see you there very soon. And again, go check out Jesson and all of his work by heading to the show notes for episode 251. Thanks again, Jesson.
Thank you so much.